Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new build on Spell Slam. We've got something super exciting to present to you today, and it's called Dead Dog. It's a pretty old archetype. It's been around for a very long time. It's kind of under the radar because a lot of Golgari decks kind of outvalue it in a lot of ways. But this is kind of like a aggro combo deck that can also kind of go the distance in the long games. It's a very interesting deck to look at. It's basically based around these Vampire Hounds here, where you can discard a creature card to give it +2/+2 until end of turn, and you abuse that effect with a bunch of madness creatures in order to just pump this thing to ridiculous proportions and hit them for huge, often lethal amounts of damage. Accompanying these Vampire Hounds are another kind of hound, the Wild Mongrel, a very, very famous card from Odyssey. 2 mana, 2/2, you discard a card to give it +1/+1, and it becomes a color of your choice. Can sometimes be relevant, but oftentimes you just do it for the discard effect, and it's a very, very powerful 2-drop. To accompany all of these other discard effects, we've got the traditional Tortured Existence. So in a lot of ways, this looks like a Tortured Existence deck, and it can operate just like one, which leads it to have some very grindy matches and things like that, but it's really based around the Vampire Hounds and the Wild Mongrel kind of going aggro on the opponent and dealing tons and tons of damage from your hand. To accompany all these discard effects, we've got, of course, Basking Rootwalla, Madison for 0, very, very good effect, and you can also pump it to a 3/3, which is actually quite relevant, and you'll be seeing a lot of very fat Rootwallas in the future. We've also got a Grave Scrabbler. This is probably one of my favorite cards in Pauper, an absolute engine. I don't know why I don't run more of these more often. They're absolutely excellent. 4 mana 2/2 is junk, but when you mass it in for just 2 mana, you get an instant speed 2 mana 2/2 that brings back a creature from your graveyard. It's one of the main ways of winning through Vampire Hounds is by discarding it, giving it +2/+2, returning, say, another Grave Scrabbler, discarding that one, paying 2 for the madness, replaying it, and then getting back a Basking Rootwalla, and then discarding it and replaying it for 0. Not only are you making a huge Vampire Hound, but you're also developing this huge board state, which is really hard to overcome. We've also got our last madness creature here, Arrogant Worm. Arrogant Worm is an awesome card. It's a 5 mana 4/4 with trample and also has madness, but I love this card. It doesn't feel like a common to me, and when I play this deck, I have this deck in paper in my Paper Pauper battle bag, and I don't include this card because it was only ever printed as a common online in Vintage Masters, and otherwise, if you want to find yourself a paper copy, the only copy you can find of this is in Torment as an uncommon. So, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like a common to me, but hey, it's very powerful. I can play it online, so I'm not complaining. Let's go over here. We've got 2 Carrion Feeders. This is my personal inclusion. I like to be able to kind of reset these Grave Scrabblers. Often the opponent just kind of wants these to stay on the battlefield just because of how powerful they are, and Carrion Feeder just gives you a way to kind of deal with bad board states, gives you some inevitability by being able to recur creatures and then sacrifice them to the Carrion Feeder, then return them to Tortured Existence and kind of get an engine going that way. So it adds a lot of inevitability and just another fat creature to feed off of our board. We've got 4 Fume Spitters, really good against Delver, kind of mediocre against everything else, good at weakening opposing creatures, just good sacrifice fodder, discard fodder, and the occasional removal spell. Over here we've got 2 Crypt Rats, just kind of very, very good card, especially with Tortured Existence, can finish the game out of nowhere. It also explains why we have 8 Swamps and 6 Forests. This split, we do have a lot of black cards, but we do it mostly for the Crypt Rats here, as well as the 4 Golgari Guild Gates and 4 Jungle Hollow. We've got 2 Golgari Roundscale, gives us some life gain on the main board, which can be really, really important, as well as being able to dredge a creature back all the time, developing the board and stuff, giving us more options, letting us to find the cards that we need to be able to take the game down, like a Crypt Rats, for example, or a Vampire Hound. This dredge can go a very, very long way in this deck, so excellent card to have in some small number here. We've got 3 Lead the Stampede, another little downgrade here that I found very, very useful. We're currently running 30 creatures. Decks like these usually run like 30 to 32. I think 3 Lead the Stampede is pretty reasonable, and it should be able to just draw us, 2, 3, 4 cards sometimes. So looking forward to see how good this is. And finally, I like to have in all of my decks some sort of like hope to win in unwinnable scenarios. So, for example, this Rite of Consumption, it can be used as a combo piece with Vampire Hounds. You know, you pump it up to 10 power, you attack with it, and then you Rite of Consumption, and your opponent's just dead. It's also more main board life gain, and in scenarios where your opponent's at 8 life, but they've managed to stabilize, and you've got this big board, but they've got a big board, and there's no way they can that you can kind of punch through it. Well, you know, you can always hope to draw Rite of Consumption to get you out of it. In otherwise, it's just a another sacrifice creature spell where you get to destroy kill something to a player or planeswalker apparently, and then you get to gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So that's the main board. Let's take a look at our sideboard over here. It's pretty typical. It looks a lot like my Tortured Existence sideboard actually, but with a few little differences. We've got 4 Duress here, 1 Thrall Surgeon. I just love this card. I think it's so cool because you can grab anything with it. Artifacts, creatures, instants, sorceries, even lands. So it's a really unique card, and just for 4 mana, you don't even have to wait for its Summoning Sickness to wear off. You can just use it all the time. So very, very good in long, grindy matchups. We've got an extra Crypt Rats in here, 2 Fairy Macabres. Very good at blocking Delver Secrets. It can also be used as Graveyard Hate that you can actually recur because you discard it. So yeah, very, very cool card. We've got Caustic Caterpillar, good at destroying enchantments. Again, another one of these cards, a lot like Thrall Surgeon, where you don't have to you don't have to lose the Summoning Sickness in order to use it. You can just play it, and it's essentially a 3 mana disenchant, but it's a creature, which means you can get it back with Tortured Existence, or discard it to Vampire Hounds, and it's it's a lot more flexible being a creature. So yeah, this little insect doing a lot of work. 2 Spore Frogs if you feel like going the more traditional Tortured Existence route with, setting up a Golgari Brown Scale in the long run and Spore Frog. Otherwise, it's just a very good fog effect. Yeah, that's it. Knot of the Bone, some great life gain. It's kind of like a fog as well, but it can gain you just horrendous amounts of life. If you got like 8 creatures, suddenly you're gaining 16 life and then 32 life, and I can get absolutely crazy with this card. And finally, 1 single Tranquility. I don't mind my Tortured Existence getting destroyed in this with this deck in particular. It's not that big of a deal because that's not really how we're planning to win unless it's through this grinding match, but that's not what Tranquility's for, really. So I hope you guys enjoy the games to come, and we will see you soon.